over anybody.
No, we didn't.
Yep. He
You
almost
had
ran over a
crashes.
goose.
They got 100 on each test.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
But he's-
unheard of.
He's a pretty smart kid.
Yeah.
But,
They both are.
so I mean, this all kind of started because I wanted them to hear what life was like when you guys were 12 and 15 and junior high and going into high school and learning to drive, and adolescent. But then I thought, you know, just growing up in World War II and the Korean War and when you decide you want to be a doctor and just all those kind of things. I just thought it'd be really interesting.
I didn't pay much. I didn't pay much attention to the wars, really. I remember when World War II was over. It was so exciting. People were out on the streets. Car horns were honking. It was just such an exciting day. But I think I must have been. Oh, I don't know. How old would I have been then? I was young. Under 10.
You were 10 years old because the war was over in 1945.
Okay, I was 10 years old. I remember mostly that life was a lot simpler than it is now, because we didn't have TVs. We listened to the radio. We had great radio programs. Grandpa and I both remember, and we had our favorite radio programs, just like you guys have your favorite TV programs now, and we loved it. We loved our programs. Another thing that's different is we walked everywhere or rode our bikes, because my family had one car and my father worked, so we even walked to the grocery store, and my mother took us in a wagon, a little red wagon. We loaded the groceries in the red wagon, even in the snow, and it was harder for my mother, much harder for my mother than it was for me, because she didn't have a clothes dryer. Of course, there weren't any. She had to hang her clothes up.
When would this have been? What years?
Early 1930s until probably 1940. No, there weren't dishwashers, of course. There weren't TVs. But we had so much fun because we went sledding, we ice skated a lot. We were outside all the time. We were always playing outside. And we lived in South Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is right next to Lake Michigan, and it was cold. We got a lot of snow. It was cold, 9 months out of the year. We had really not much summer because it was so close to that big old lake. What do you remember?
Where'd you grow up, Dad?
Well, I sort of transplanted around. I was born in Indianapolis, and we moved up to Cahoga Falls, which is outside of Cleveland, and then down to Cincinnati, and that was where we stayed. So I grew up in Cincinnati from K2, K through medical school. It was an interesting time. I was born right in between World War I and World War II in 1926, which was, they usually think of the Great Depression as starting in 1929, and then it ran through the 30s, so we were right in the middle of the Great Depression. However, we were very fortunate because my dad had a good job with AT&T, the American telephone, and I don't know, that company may fade out eventually, but he was with it almost all his life.
I think I thought he was a doctor for some reason.
No, it was my mother's father was a doctor in a little town in Indiana called New Ross, and my father came from Waveland, Indiana, and the trolley line ran between there and Indianapolis, and he and I think Mother used to ride the trolley line back and forth. They got trapped in World War I then. My father got into the merchant marine, and he was assigned to a ship down in the Caribbean Ocean. He was lucky they didn't get sunk, but a lot of the ships down in the Caribbean got sunk.
That's World War I?
Yes, World War I. The Germans had a lot of submarines over in that area. But he talks about Jamaica, and we had been there, so we sort of know what he was talking about at that time. But anyway, he came out of there and married my mom, and she had had been going to Indiana University at Bloomington, so, but they got married, and then they moved to Indianapolis, and he got his job. He was offered a professorship at the university. He graduated. He went to school while he was there to college at Butler. He graduated magna cum laude, even though I was a little guy at the time, and they offered him a job with the university, but they didn't pay as much money as AT&T did, so he stayed with them. And then I grew up coming up into World War II, and when I was in high school, I graduated from high school in 1944, but before that the war was going on between 41 and 45.
That's when you were Chris's age.
Yeah, I would have been Chris's age then. Yeah. I would have been about. Anyway, we came up to his senior year, and they gave us a test. I took a test, and I enlisted in the Navy. So, but fortunately, or unfortunately, however, they assigned me to a college up in Denison was the name of the college, in Granville, Ohio, which is about 15 miles east of Columbus. And I had a lot of fun there.
This was when you were in the Navy in Ohio.
I was in the Navy in a Navy program. Yeah, we marched around and did exercises in the morning.
What was it called, your program?
It was called V12, which was a Navy officers training. I also qualified for the V5, which was their Air Force, was their air wing of the Navy. I would have gone down to Pensacola then, but anyway, I didn't get assigned. I didn't do that. So, but I did take a test for Annapolis, and lo and behold, passed that test, and so I got assigned to Annapolis. Had 3 months off in between Denison and Annapolis. I got went to the University of Cincinnati during that time, and got a few credits in pre-med. And when I was originally assigned to Denison, they gave us a whole lot of choices of different fields that we could go into. Apparently, they just wanted to keep the universities open. That they didn't have any males. Most of the males had gone into service. So I said, Dad, what do you think I ought to do here? I've got all these. He says, well, your grandpa was a doctor, you know. We always admired him. So I said, okay. So I went into the medical field.
So that's how you decided to be a doctor?
That's how I decided to be a doctor, yeah.
Wow.
And I always admired my grandfather, too, because he was a good old country doctor. Horse and bucking, no less, out there.
I bet. That was in the 1800s.
Yeah, he started out in the 1800s.
Tell him about the flu epidemic that he...
Okay, there was a big influenza epidemic in around 1918. That was when World War I was over. And my mother, the doctor we're talking about was my mother's father, and he went around to different houses, made house calls. You know, some wintertime. This was wintertime in Indiana, central Indiana, and my Uncle Ed, he drove the horse and buggy, and Grandpa curled up in the back seat and amongst all the big wool blankets, and he slept going from house to house. And then when they'd get to the next house, my uncle would curl up on the couch and he'd sleep, and Grandpa would do his thing, whatever they could do then back in the olden days. I think mostly gave him a tincture of opiate or something like that, because there wasn't much they could really do. And then, so anyhow, my uncle always said that convinced him that he didn't want to become a doctor after he did all that going around then. And well, one thing led to another, and I've talked enough, I think.
No, tell him about Annapolis.
So the government paid for your college. You signed up for the Navy,
Right.
And they sent you to college to be whatever you wanted to be?
Right, yeah, they did, and so, so there we were, and there I was in the Navy, and then I went into Annapolis, so although I had a total of 19 months in the service, which wasn't quite enough to qualify me to escape the Korean War. So anyway, after I got out of Annapolis, came back to the University of Cincinnati and finished up my pre-med, and they let me get into medical school after 3 years of pre-med, and usually it took 4, but they let some of us through because they needed bodies.
But they needed doctors too.
Yeah,
You probably got good grades too.
I probably did, yeah. And then I went to, so after my first year in medical school, I went back to college, or I went to the undergraduate part, took some more classes, finished up enough to get a BS degree, so I got my bachelor's degree. And one of the best times was working in between my sophomore or in between my freshman and sophomore year in college. I got a job with Dr. Albert Sabin in his laboratory. He had the whole top floor of the Children's Hospital in Cincinnati was his laboratory, and he was working on polio vaccine at the time. And he had there had lots of rhesus monkeys that were flying around in the cages in there. And my job was to go catch the monkeys, which I certainly would never do now. But we had great big leather gauntlets that we put on, you know. And then we go around and monkeys would be flying around, and jumping from wall to wall. We'd grab them.
I'm sure they didn't know what was in store for them.
No. Yeah, then they'd give them a little chloroform. But that was a good experience working with him. He was a rare genius. Dr. Salk developed a dead vaccine while Dr. Sabin was working on a live vaccine. And Dr. Salk came out with that first, but that never took. It didn't do quite as well as the live vaccine, which you put a drop of this serum on a sugar cube or something like that, and kids could eat that very, very easily.
So Sabin, really, because Jonas Salk, isn't he the one who gets credit for it?
Jonas Salk got more credit for it at the time, but it's the Sabin vaccine that we use now.
Huh.
Dr. Sabin went on from Cincinnati, went on to Tel Aviv University over in Israel. He was the president of the university over there for a while. He died not too long ago.
You get royalties for that, right?
Get what?
Royalties? Every time someone takes a polio vaccine?
That'd be nice. That would be nice. Yeah, okay.
That reminds me about polio. When I was in grade school and probably middle school, polio was rampant, and it caused paralysis. It caused paralysis, death. Some people still have, they still have a little paralysis from it. They're still around before the vaccines, but we used to have to stay in our yards all summer long. We could not leave our yard. We could not go to a movie. We couldn't go swimming. We couldn't, if we stayed in our own yards, the polio wasn't spread from person to person.
How old were you then?
Probably from, it lasted probably for 5 years. Probably from 8 to something, 8 years on. So we could call across the yards to our friends, but we could not leave our yards for whole summers at a time. They used to quarantine for chickenpox then and measles too. If you got measles or chickenpox or mumps, you got a sign on your door and you couldn't leave, you couldn't go to school. Now there's vaccines for those things. But when I was a child, we didn't even have antibiotics, no antibiotics. So if you got a strep throat, you were sick. You just had to get over it.
That's really something.
I know. I mostly remember from my childhood playing outside, riding my bike, going to the park. There weren't all the activities that there are now for you guys. You stay so busy, you know, with different leagues
Sports stuff.
and things
After
like
school stuff.
after school. There wasn't. it just wasn't that organized. We just came home from school and played. But I especially loved middle school and high school because we had a big ice skating pond, maybe a mile from my house, and the lights were on it at night, and there was a warming house, and it was where we met. It was wonderful. It was so much fun. And the high school had so many activities, plays, and of course basketball and football. There was always a dance. It was a dance after every football game. It was just a fun time. But we did walk. We didn't have, the high schoolers, some had cars, but not many, not like now. We just really walked. And right after high school, I went into nurses training, which was 3 years, except that we only got 2 weeks vacation a year, so.
How'd you know you wanted to be a nurse?
I just loved science. I just always did. Like biology. When we were in high school, we could decide whether we wanted to go into a trade, which some of the boys did, of course, into a trade or into secretarial, or to go to college. And so that it shunted you into different classes. And I chose college, so I got, yeah. But once you got into that line, that's what you studied. If you chose secretarial, you took typing and bookkeeping and shorthand and all those things.
Because women really didn't work much back then, did
Women
they?
didn't have many choices. They could be teacher, nurse. No, there weren't the choices. Most people got married and had their families, and yeah, that's what they did.
What about traveling? Would you guys travel? Family vacations, go to the beach, go do all that when you were kids?
When I was young, we went to Pennsylvania every summer to visit my grandmas, my aunts and uncles, because both my parents were from Pennsylvania. They were from Erie, and I loved that. That was just, it was great. But it was the long ride too, long ride both ways. And then later, my dad would get a cottage in Hayward that David probably remembers, and we would spend a couple weeks there every summer. But no, people didn't really go out to dinner like they do now. There weren't the restaurants, and I don't remember ever going out to dinner except on a vacation. But we had some cousins in Illinois, and my grandmother would come to visit, and I don't know, it was just, it was simpler, but it was fun. It was.
You think it was better back then?
No. No, not at all. Not at all. I think life is wonderful now. I really, really do. When I married, let's see, I must have been out 3 years out of nurses training. And I worked in surgery. I was a surgical nurse. And then I went to the University of Wisconsin and worked at Madison General and married. And when David was a baby, we moved to Kansas City. We did not have air conditioning, and it was hot. It was a hot climate. Yeah.
Did many people have air conditioning back then?
It was just getting started. It was just kind of getting going. The cars didn't have it, but you were used to it. That's how it was. I mean, we didn't know.
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't really know.
Yeah, you just sweltered and lived with us. I remember when we were, when I first went into the Air Force, and sort of skipped from the last time there, but when I first went into the Air Force, I was assigned to a preliminary school down in Gunter Air Force Base in Montgomery, Alabama.
Yeah.
And from there I went to flight surgeon school, which was in San Antonio, Texas. And we were setting record heat waves down there then. Global warming, you might say.
There you go.
back in 1953, that was 1953. It was 107 degrees down there. And our air conditioning, they had no air conditioning. What we had was boxes that sat in the window, and they let and water drip down onto burlap, and then a fan behind it blew through it, and that was then we'd curl up in front of on the floor in front of this window, and that was the air conditioning that they had down there.
Did you fly? Were you a pilot?
I was not a pilot, but I had to have flight time. I had to fly for about 8 hours each month. I'd go with some of my pilots. I got a fair amount of time on Goonie birds. Those were I forget what they were. Can't remember. C-24, well, it was they called them Goonie birds anyhow. It was a very stable airplane, 2 propellers, one on each side, you know, and that plane was very good. Everybody liked it. Ran for a long time. I got about 35 hours of time in what they call a T-33 trainer. It was a 2-seater jet plane, so we could travel.
Take off and land?
I never did it myself. No, I just rode along under the pilot. After flight surgeon school, I was assigned to Youngstown, Ohio. We had a interceptor base there, a fighter interceptor. They were F-86Ds. Probably by the time anybody looks like this, that'll be a real relic. No such thing as an F-86 anymore. But they used to go 600 miles an hour. 650 would be the Mach, would be the speed of sound. So they almost got to it. And we were defending the United States against any Russians that would come over the North Pole.
Was that a real threat?
It was at that time. Yeah, it sure was. That was before Reagan. That was the Cold War. I was responsible. In fact, for a while I was the only doctor at the air base with the squadron, and we had a radar unit, one of those great big balls that were sat on the ground that they had a radar inside of them. They were watching for people coming, you know. And it was good duty. And in fact, that was a time that Sputnik came over. I remember being there.
Oh, I remember that.
I remember Sputnik.
Could you see it?
I saw it from the roof of Madison General Hospital.
Oh, really?
I was on duty and it came over. Oh yeah, it was, you could really see it. I gotta tell a tale on Grandpa. When he was a little boy, his parents would send him every summer to be with his grandparents on the farm in Indiana. He and his sister. So he was there for 3 months. It was a big part of his growing up because Aunt Jenny, who lived with us for 5 years when David was still at home, was an old maid school teacher. And he got the advantage of her reading to him and teaching him all kinds of things. But it was in a little tiny town, and I mean little tiny town, Waveland, Indiana. And they would put a sheet up across the main street and show movies on the weekends.
Really?
Yeah.
That was the movie theater?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Let
And there
everybody
was a
come out.
creek the boys could swim in, the kids could swim in. He had a much more interesting childhood than I did. I mean, he did a lot, he just did.
Now, there were 450 people in this town, and there's still
There still
450.
It's a little town.
And they leave
It's
as
a pretty
fast
little
as they
town.
come.
But,
Aunt Jeannie was a school teacher.
Aunt Jenny was a teacher, yeah.
Yeah. She taught 1st and 2nd grade,
Wow.
and for as long as she was there in the school, that's what she taught.
When David's sister Karen went to college at Auburn, Aunt Jenny came to live with us, and she lived with us from the time she was 80 till she was 85.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
Why
used
don't
to
you,
come and,
why don't you talk about, because Chris is learning to drive right now, why don't you talk about teaching Karen how to learn to drive?
Oh boy, this ought to be interesting.
oh, I talk about that.
This ought to be very interesting.
She did.
She was harder to teach than I was.
Oh, she was, yeah, she
Yes,
was.
so
One time we pulled out, we lived in Sun Prairie, no,
Verona.
we lived in Verona, Wisconsin then. We lived on a circle and pulled out onto kind of a busy 2-way street, kind of a county road.
The highway.
Yeah, it was a highway. And she turned left into the oncoming traffic instead of pulling over into the far lane. And I said, Karen, you're in the wrong lane. And she swerved over and she said, you make me so nervous, Mom. I said, you made me so nervous, I'm not gonna drive with you anymore, Karen. So Daddy took over then.
So I took over, yeah. We didn't have any disasters then until we got to we lived on Sugar Tree out on Long Hollow Pike here in Hendersonville. And we came to a stop where Beach High School is now, and there were bushes there where you couldn't see, and so we had a stick shift car, and then by golly, it was a little Toyota that we brought from Wisconsin.
I remember that, little Toyota Corolla.
A little blue one.
Yeah.
Awful car.
Well, there wasn't anybody coming, so it was there was a stoplight there, and it was green for us, so she started up and stalled the car, and the bushes were on the side here where you couldn't see the other. So she got it started again then, and the light was still green, and so she started off. Well, we had some guy coming the other way that he didn't see her, of course, and he was just going to run the red light. He didn't think there was anybody there, so we got smacked right in the side. That was our worst.
It wasn't bad. No, it wasn't bad. They didn't get hurt.
No.
But she's a good driver now. She drives all
I know,
over.
I'm not trying to pick on Karen, I just thought with Chris learning to drive, that would be
I
interesting.
know.
Yeah.
What was, how come you guys moved to Tennessee? What was the,
Oh, it was funny. We had a motorhome, and we made a lot of trips down at spring breaks and Easter to Florida. And one time we stopped at Stone Mountain, Georgia on the way back, I remember, and I got to talking to a woman with a baby there, and I said, what's it like here in the summer? And she said, it's just like this. And I said, do you mean it's not horribly, horribly hot? And she said, no, it's just like, it's like this. It was beautiful. Wisconsin, it was sleeting and cold and gray. So
probably about this, no, I guess a little later than this. But.
So we got back, and I said to Dad, someday let's move south. And we said to Karen, when you get out of high school, we're gonna get out of this climate. And she said, don't wait, let's go now. I want to go too. I want to live in the South. So we started looking in the back of medical journals. There were all kinds of medical practice opportunities, all kinds of headhunters. I never had any idea there was such a thing. So we just contacted one on a whim, and they started sending us Florida, Georgia. Every weekend we were flying somewhere. It was wonderful. And his Daddy's criteria were, it has to be near a major medical center, it should be a lake. What was the third one? The three things. Major medical center, we have to be near water. It was another thing too. So when we got to Hendersonville, it was a brand new hospital. It was just a cute, cute town. And we had spent some time in Tennessee bringing horses back and forth for breeding or whatever. We liked Tennessee, and it wasn't the deep South, it was mid-South. So we just feel like we landed in the best possible place. We love it here. We've been here 30 years now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the biggest surprise when you got here? I remember mine, but what was your biggest surprise? The biggest, wow, I never would have imagined that.
I think how lonely I was. Just, y'all were in high school or college, and so I didn't have that way to make friends. We kind of were in the country with our horses. I missed my friends. So.
Now, did you live in Sugar Tree?
We lived on Sugar Tree.
That was the first place to live?
We had the horses. We had 5 horses, I think.
Talk about White House, just so the boys can get an understanding of where White House has come since then. Isn't that your first practice?
What it was like.
Yeah, we lived in we lived on a Sugar Tree is the name of the street. It was a little development down there. And I used to ride my motorcycle up to White House. It had an office up there. I was there for 5 years, and and I was involved in the doctors the doctor organization, the family physician organization, and one of the doctors worked for an insurance company in downtown Nashville. American General was the name of it. and he asked if I would come join him down there. So they made an offer that we couldn't hardly refuse. So we left White House, and I went down to American General Insurance, and I was their medical director down there. I was there for 5 years. He retired, and then I was medical director for a year. And one thing led to another, and I also worked, then I also got a part-time. I was working with Social Security, and then American General downsized to a half a doctor a day, which wasn't enough for me to do. So I went with Social Security then full-time. That was disability determination was the section we were with. And then another insurance company, CNA, asked if I would help them some, so I asked the Social Security fellows if that would be all right. So they said yes, I could work with them. So I worked half-time one and half-time the other. And
David wants to know what White House was like.
what was White House like?
Little White House.
Because I remember going there. That was,
Well, it's a
it
small
was back when it was just a country town.
It's a small town. They had a
It's not anymore.
They had a grocery store and a pharmacy and a couple of farm implement stores. Just things that you would imagine that a small town would have. That there were no Walmarts, nothing like that around there. And I think that they did end up, let's see, there was one company that did move up there that did a lot of warehousing there, and I can't think of the name of it now, but it was an industrial plant.
It's a cute little town.
Mm, it's changed now. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really grown
It's
up
just
there now.
almost a little
You want to
metropolis.
ask us any questions? Christopher?
You're an important part of life, Chris. Starting
I know.
high school and going to think about college here next 3 years.
You're gonna love high school. You are gonna love it.
Yeah. Those aren't good times.
It
You
really,
can't wait to get out, and you get out and you go, wow, I missed that.
Yeah, high school was the best time for me ever.
it was me too.
Yeah. Oh, I got on the track team there. Maybe I told you about that before. About I ended up.
Chris is a pretty good runner.
Yeah, well, I was their pole vaulter,
Hmm.
and so, the track team, they'd come to the end of the meet. All the races would run, and the other field events would go. And the track and the pole vaulting was the last one that was finished. And I always won, and everybody always gathered around, to see what was going on over there. And so we always had a big.
You perform well under pressure, huh?
Well, it worked pretty well there. Yeah. All through high school, I won every meet, came in first, which was kind of good. Won the district and won the city. This was in Cincinnati, so that
Wow.
I mean, there were a lot of high schools there. There was
How high would you go?
Well, back in those days, I have to make apologies.
But they didn't have fiberglass poles
There
and
were
carbon
no
fiber.
fiberglass poles. We had a little stiff aluminum pole, and the highest I went was 11 feet.
Well, this is a 9-foot ceiling, so that's 2 feet higher than that.
Yeah.
What did you land on?
Well, sometimes we'd land on sawdust. Sometimes they had some sponge rubber out there. Usually we had a sawdust pit that we landed in.
Did you ever break anything?
I might have broken a thumb at one time, but I don't know. I never went to have it looked at, but it was sore for a long time afterwards. But it was a lot of fun. Oh, go back to when I was in Denison University. I had a squadron leader that used to always ride us guys. I was just one of the guys in the platoon, and this guy, his name was McNulty, and he always pulled his hat over his head like this, He was And they'd say, all right, you guys straighten up, you know, it gives a hard time. So when I got back to Cincinnati, and for that semester, I was on the track team at the university there, and we had a track meet with Denison University, and lo and behold, this guy McNulty was there pole vaulting. And probably the best time of my life was I beat that sucker. And he wasn't very cocky when he finished up
Not a
there.
very gracious loser.
Yeah. I think I beat him out by 3 inches, and he was. That was a happy day.
Yeah. You guys have a lot to look forward to. You know, things just get more fun as you get a little bit older, and you can. Don't you think, David?
Mm-hmm. It does. It keeps getting better.
It keeps getting better. Childhood is fun, but you're anxious to grow up.
It's
and you're
like as these
anxious
guys get older, you know, they're in the little, it's like, oh, this is great. It can't get any better, and it just keeps getting better and better.
I know.
And
It
now they're
does.
at a great age right now,
Yeah.
but I'm
Yeah.
sure it'll just continue to get better.
You know, I found out that the more I could prepare for what was coming next, you know, the better I did at it. If you coast along too much, you know,
You get
you're
behind.
not quite ready for what's coming, so that you don't do quite as well as you could if you were prepared for it. So anything that's coming up, and if you know it's coming, you know, it helps.
And when you look back, especially high school, a little bit further, you realize how important some decisions are. The decisions that you make are so important. They can hold you back, or they can propel you forward with good people, good friends, but they're so important. Each decision is, I think Daddy made good ones, I really do.
Yeah. I found along the way it's best to be good to everybody. Try and not offend anyone, because you never know when the guy who you offend, he's going to be ahead of you the next step along that you don't know is coming now. And you never know when that's going to be. And the older you get, the more true that is.
It is.
Yeah.
I
Burning
remember
bridges.
Dr. Frisk that founded HCA. We were pretty good friends. He was a good friend of Dad's, but we were in the hospital with him one day, I think Centennial, and I noticed he spoke to every maid, no matter how low they were. This man was a multi-millionaire. If there was a scrap of paper on the floor of his hospital, he'd pick it up. But it just impressed me so that they loved him. They really did. He was nice to everyone. And because if you're not, people will remember it, and it comes back, it haunts you, it does.
He was a very good man, and like Mom said, he was good to everybody.
Yeah.
We got to know him because when I practiced down here, the hospital that I used was Hendersonville Hospital, and there was one organization owned it, and then HCA bought it, and Dr. First was the head of HCA, so I ended up I was the what was
Medical director.
I was the
The president of,
I was the chief of staff.
Chief of staff.
Yeah, I was the chief of staff, and so he worked pretty closely with me. I was the chief of staff and the board of directors, and so he used to take us to play golf over at Belmead Country Club, which is a pretty fancy place. You know, he'd take us to dinner, and we had a good
Vanderbilt
time.
games.
Yeah, we went to Vanderbilt, sat in their the box,
About that.
company box up there.
This is
Like-
Senator Frist now, right?
Well,
his dad.
Senator Frist this was the father of the Senator
All right.
Frist. His name was, the older doctor who founded HCA was Tommy Frist. He has another son, Tommy Frist Jr., who sort of managed the company for a while then, but Senator Frist is another son of his.
Huh.
I had a friend in high school, her name was Bobby Keys, and she was just always everything, prom queen, and everyone loved her. And the reason they loved her was because she was nice to everyone. She was always nice.
Just a good person.
Oh, she really was, yeah.
Yeah, I was
She
trying to think if
nice.
there's any, just if you look at, you know, I'm pushing in on 50, and these guys had their whole lives ahead of them, but just the life lessons, and that's probably one of the best ones.
Yeah,
Be nice to people, don't burn bridges, don't.
Don't ever say anything bad about anybody. Don't. Because it's,
help anyone you can.
Does it seem, I mean, you've had really a couple careers in the Army and being a doctor and the insurance companies, Social Security.
Yeah.
Does it go fast?
Has it gone fast? Very fast.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It has.
I'm getting close to 50. It just blows my mind.
I know. I'm 73 and Grandpa's 82,
Uh-huh.
and we're both, and it's just, we still feel like we're young.
Oh, it's
We do.
amazing the comments I get. I told you I ran into Mike Pucell, and everybody, because if they see you at Rotary, and everybody just, Billy Sinks, and they're just like, your dad, he is so full of energy. He is so funny. He makes everybody laugh. I mean, it's just, there's so many comments I get from people.
Oh, that's good.
Just
About me?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They
We get
love
good
you.
ones about you
Oh,
too.
bless their heart.
We
Yeah.
get good ones about you too.
Rotary, I don't think it would be the same if you weren't there. I mean, it's just people that I really don't even know very well when they figure out who I am. In fact, the lady that we got our Vanderbilt tickets from,
Yeah.
this Swenson. Anyway, she goes, I know your folks. So and so did this. Another doctor, he knew you from being a doctor years ago. Anyway, you guys have a great reputation here.
That's
So this lady drove all the way to Goodlettsville to get us Vanderbilt basketball tickets last weekend.
Huh.
Drove back up and met us.
Really?
It's like, we met her at a Vanderbilt game, and she said, if you ever want tickets, call me. And Chris wanted to go to the game, so I called her up, and she called me 2 days later, I got your tickets.
Huh.
And then she said, I'm on my way to Goodlettsville to get them, where do you want to meet? Wow, what a nice lady.
What a nice lady.
She goes, I've got a real good friend who knows your folks. So again, it goes back to being nice to people.
It's amazing how many people we know in 30 years. It's just amazing. It's been a good place to live.
Mm-hmm.
God's been very good to us.
What's the best trip you ever took? Mike?
Mediterranean.
Oh, yes, it was. The Mediterranean cruise. It was 17 days. It was heaven. It was, it was amazing to spend that much time in these beautiful European ports. Yeah, it was.
Florence, we got to see David.
The statue?
Yeah, the statue of David, yeah. He's
The
got a
Vatican.
broken arm, and it's been glued, there's a section put in there of, it looks like plaster of Paris. You would think of, they've got a better replica of it out at, in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace.
Really?
Yeah, it looks better than the original.
Yeah,
but-
it was a wonderful trip. It was. I thought it was gonna go on forever. 17 days is a long time. We were on a ship, we were on islands, we were in Monte Carlo and the Vatican, and it was wonderful.
Yeah, we were in the, we went through the Louvre in Paris. We got to Paris for
That
one
was a
day
different
there.
trip. That was a different trip. That was a
Was
different
that a
trip.
different trip?
Mhm.
Huh.
Oh, okay.
It was.
But this was
Yeah.
really fun. We went along a lot of the ports and Italy, Rome. Of course, we got to Rome. Got to go see the
Venice.
Vatican there. Venice.
You have to
yeah.
do it when you're
Unlike Sorrento.
Sorrento. You have to do it when you have when you're young enough and you have a lot of vitality, because it's a lot of.
I'm thinking about that for our 25th anniversary.
Yeah.
6 more years.
Just the trip over takes a lot of
Yeah, it's a long
energy
flight.
and time. I'm glad we did it when we did it.
I don't think so, Chris.
I am.
Am I
Let's
allowed to
You
see.
come?
want to go too?
Huh?
Can I come, Dad?
Probably not.
Ah.
Probably
We've
just
got
a
lots of
chance.
time.
See, you gotta save some of these trips for yourself, Michael, and you get out and do a great job, find you a wife you love, and wanna do nice things for them. What about any love lessons?
Yeah, a good wife is very important, guys. Very important.
It's pretty easy to have a good marriage when you have a good wife, isn't it?
Yeah, it sure is.
Yeah. Well, it's just, yeah, that's a good life lesson is enjoy your life. Be good, do the right thing. If you do the right thing, you know, there's sort of a path you have to follow. If you fall off it, you get yourself in trouble.
We watched a movie last night, and these guys, they didn't do the right thing. It just keeps feeding on itself and feeding on itself. Once you can't, it's hard, you can't undo it.
Yeah.
You know, you
I'll
can
tell
never,
you what's the dearest, most important thing is your reputation. Your reputation is, you just have to take good care of it. You really do. You have to tend it. It's an important thing. It's who you are. It's your base. Ask us some questions.
I'll let Chris go first.
You're tied up in your own childhoods, and you should be. You're having a good childhood.
Yeah, you guys
You really, really are. Your parents are amazing.
make the most of it.
Your parents are amazing.
Enjoy what you got.
Yeah.
They expect a lot of you, and they should, because you're both just as bright as you can be.
Yeah. We're lucky to be in the best school in Tennessee.
You're
Taking
lucky.
advantage of it too.
Yeah.
These guys are really. We get report cards next week, I think.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but think of all the trips you've taken. You do so much. You really do.
We've been really fortunate.
Yeah, you have.
What school? What grade are you in this?
Ninth?
Ninth? Does this begin high school, or do they count this as high school?
Yep, the first year.
Yeah. This begins the year when your grades and activities count.
Yeah.
This will
They don't
carry
count
on
right
and
now?
will have to do with what you
They build.
what you
yeah,
get when you're in
like
college.
Grandpa said,
Affects,
they build.
this starts to affect the rest of your life.
If you don't learn it now, you can't
It's
catch
one
up.
bad year in high school.
You just can't catch up.
All of a sudden, you may not get the college you want, which can change your whole career.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say expect a lot out of life, because you just should. God expects you to expect a lot.
Yeah. And kind of don't wait if you can take a trip. It's hard. It's that balancing act between for us saving for college, saving for retirement, trying to pay the house off, trying to have fun. You know, it's hard to put priorities over one. You know, because you got to take care of all of them.
I would say you have a pretty good time. That boat has been a wonder for you.
Oh, it's been the best thing for a
That
family.
is the best thing. It was for us too.
Yeah, it's really
Yep.
brought us together.
Always the boat.
I go ride my bike by myself. We go on the boat as a family.
Mhm.
Kids love it. Jean loves it.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
It's been the biggest part of our lives is boats
yeah.
and the water. Yeah, I can't imagine living away from water.
Yeah, we hope to. It'd be nice to live on the lake. That's still my goal. So, hopefully, whenever somebody watches this in the future, they'll go, "He got a house on the lake." I'd like for the kids to be able to have a little fishing boat or jet ski and just go whenever they want and take their buddies skiing. I think that would be cool.
I'd rather have one of those huge boats, Dad.
Would you?
Yeah.
Better save your money. Get a good job.
They're not any more fun than the little ones.
I don't know.
Just do different stuff with them.
They're lots of work. You can't go as many places with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, boating's been a big part of our lives. It
Mhm.
really has.
Yeah.
And the horses were fun.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that. We talked about Verona and raising the horses and having the babies, and we put in the fences, because that was a big part of life in Verona.
It was. Do
The
you
trail
remember
rides, remember the endurance rides?
Yeah.
Going on the Wisconsin River?
Old Rifle.
Yeah. He was a
Rifle.
pistol.
Rowdy was a good horse. That was your horse.
I remember when we went to buy him, and you took Rowdy and you rode like 3 miles. I remember watching you ride along this big ridge in the back, just at a canter or gallop.
Uh-huh.
He could go forever.
He was a pleasant horse.
Yeah.
There's nothing bad about that horse.
Those were great times. That's when I was your age, Chris.
Yeah.
We lived in the country. We could ride 1,000 acres. You just open the fence and go. The next farm, open the fence and go.
Your dad loved the outdoors. Oh my goodness. He did.
It's hard to be an outdoorsman here,
Yeah.
hunt or do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not like it used to be.
That's another thing about when I was a child. I don't remember there ever being a murder in our town, a rape, anything. Nothing. I was safe always. I could walk anywhere.
Mhm.
I was never afraid. Never.
We used to ride our bikes everywhere.
Uh-huh.
Remember my newspaper route?
Yeah.
I mean, golly, I was between Michael and Chris's age.
Mhm.
You know, you didn't worry about that.
You never
Yeah.
did.
We used to ride our bikes.
My parents never even warned me to be, you know, I was never afraid.
Do you think it's because it wasn't there, or they just didn't report it back then?
I think that once drugs came into being, everything changed.
Yeah, I can see that.
I really do. Drugs changed. It's just been a bad thing. It's too bad. But, yeah. I don't know. Of course, our town was the people didn't move in and out very much. They just lived there. So,
Yeah,
Now
people are
people are
pretty
very
transient
migrant.
anymore.
yeah.
It's funny, you don't know the neighbors like you used to.
You know, you live your whole life next to, yeah. Once Dad graduated from high school, he was gone. He was on his own, pretty much. I mean, he went home for vacations maybe, but he was very independent, probably more than I was.
Who do you think the best president was?
Eisenhower.
How come?
Everything went right. It was the end of the big war, you know, and I think it was before the next one. And just people didn't worry about their jobs, or everybody had a job that wanted one, you know. He was a hero, you know. He was a war hero, and so I just always thought of him as being the. I figured at that time, I said, we're living in our very best times now, and I think we probably did, because then, of course, things have been kind of in a continuous turmoil since then.
Were you out of college then?
Yeah. Now I'm trying to think when. That must have been about. He must have been around 45, 40. Yeah, he came after Truman, I think, and Truman would have been there about 47, 48, and then Eisenhower came in someplace there. So that would have been about the time that I was graduating from college and getting started in medicine, and I went into the Air Force. And by the time I got into the Air Force, the Cold War was going full tilt.
With
Although
Russia?
It never really affected anybody too much here in the United States. That was always kind of a worry.
It was a scare, it was.
Yeah.
Cuba? Remember the Cuban Missile Crisis? Was that scary? Or was it more a bigger deal
Not too
now?
much, it went over pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was here and gone in a hurry before we really knew that they were.
Huh.
I don't know where I think they were sending missiles, weren't they? I'm not sure whether they actually sent them or they were just threatening to, but.
There's always been wars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's always been something going on.
Yeah, when I was in the Air Force, that was the Korean War. That was the next war. I think. Yeah.
What's the best financial advice you give these guys getting started?
Get a good advisor, someone who knows the business, who understands money, and let them run your things for you.
I would say live within your means. Don't buy things you don't need. Don't try and keep up with the Joneses. And be content.
Mm-hmm. Start saving early.
Start saving. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
start saving. Learning about investing. But be happy. Be happy. Just
Yeah, that's one of the basic. I think it's a basic lesson that the Bible teaches. They have a story about that, about some guy hired people in the field to pay him so much, and then he didn't have enough to do the job, and so then they hired some more, you know, and they paid them more, and then they hired some more a third time, so that by the time they hired the third time, they were making considerably more money than the first group that he had held. And the lesson was, don't envy the people that have more than you do, that made more than you did. That take what you contracted for and be be happy, don't begrudge the other people, which is the same thing Mom was saying.
Yeah, don't begrudge, and don't think that because someone has more, that they're happier than you are.
You know, that's certainly not the truth.
It's not
Yeah,
true. No,
yeah.
it's not. It's not. If you can be content, always, you just, it's just human nature to strive for more and want more, and that's fun, that's good. But
Yeah,
It's not everything.
it's not, no, it's not. It's really, really not.
yeah.
I think your dad's done a good, I think your dad is very sensible that way. I admire him for that. He, David, he just enjoys every day.
We've done all right.
Yeah, you've done good.
Been pretty blessed. Watch these boys grow up.
You're very blessed.
Jean's a great wife.
These
Yeah.
guys are gonna be good. These guys are gonna be great.
We have lots of fun ahead of us.
Yep,
Can't wait.
sure do.
Yeah. We got a lot of fun behind us too. We've had a lot of fun.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I'm glad we ended up living so close to you. You could see him grow up.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Who would have ever guessed that one?
It was a miracle. I know, it was a miracle.
Yeah.
It really, really was.
It's funny. I remember when Gina and I were looking for our house. No, we were in marriage counseling, and the rector said, you know, where do you want to be in 10 years? Where do you want to live? And I said, you know, a community like Hendersonville. We're close to Nashville, but it's got small enough. People know each other. Good church. You can go to Nashville when you want. He said, well, why don't you just move there now? I was like, he was right. Why not go ahead and start there?
That's
Instead of
how it
wanting to be
happened.
there in 5 years or 10 years, why not go ahead and move there?
I know, it's just so great. It is so great.
Yeah, it's been a great decision for us.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a miracle.
We're sure very glad to have you here.
Yeah, it's worked out. It's just been a very good thing.
Same church.
Yeah.
I've been eavesdropping.
Huh?
I've just been eavesdropping.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's fun, I know.
Wow.
These
Any
guys,
questions you have, sweetie?
Anything at all?
things weren't that different for us, but 2 generations back, it was a lot different. I mean, it was really, really different. People were mostly in small towns, they stayed there. Life was more, it was more rural. It was quieter, it was a lot quieter,
I mean, it was a lot quieter when I was a kid than when these guys are.
yeah.
I mean, it's
You're playing
go,
hard, David.
it's go, go, go now for the kids. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just continuous.
You
Sports
have-
all the time.
You had a good, just neighborhood play.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot different now than when I was a kid.
And you spent a lot of time out in the woods.
When we were in Verona, yeah, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. In fact, I went on Google Earth. I don't know if you guys ever go on there and looked, and there's still a lot of that land is still open back behind us. Those farms, they haven't developed any of it. Went
It was-
back there and looked where I used to go hiking and camping back there.
It was beautiful country.
It was a great place to live.
Dad he practiced medicine in Madison then, but he decided that he wanted these guys to grow up in the country, in a small town. Well,
Mhm.
actually, drugs were coming in at that time.
In
Ma-
Madison?
Marijuana, mm-hmm, yeah, big time,
Yeah.
yeah,
Nothing like the stuff is today.
I know.
Bunch of
It's true.
wackos.
And that was a wonderful school, that was a good little,
Yeah.
it was a good town. Still hear from people at Christmas from there,
I hear from the Norders.
you know,
That's all the ones I hear from.
they're still there, same
know.
house,
604 Hillcrest Drive.
yeah.
Good
Got any
stuff.
questions, Jean? We all have been, all of us have been extremely fortunate, genetically,
Yeah.
energy, health,
Yeah.
We were just so lucky to be born where we were born.
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean, sheer luck. I guess it's luck. Maybe we'll
Yes.
find out someday.
Well, we could have been in South Africa, but fortunately.
Sure could.
Yeah.
I know, when I was reading through that genealogy, all of my relatives were from Pennsylvania. If my father hadn't gotten a job opportunity in Milwaukee, you know, that's where I would have grown up.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talk about those decisions. You know, my biggest life decision was, do I stay in Wisconsin or move to Tennessee? You know, it's like, thank God I moved to Tennessee, because I don't know what I'd be if I still lived in Wisconsin. But that was probably, marrying Gene was a big one, but that was a huge life decision.
It was,
Affected-
Dave.
Affected my whole life tremendously.
It really was.
You think about just some of those decisions you have to make. Do I turn right or do I turn left?
You've made some big decisions.
Because you can't go back once you make that turn.
Yeah,
That's right.
you've
Yeah.
made some very big decisions.
Yeah.
I think they all look like they're ready for a break-in.
Yep.
And your batteries have to die.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
He's had an interesting life. Daddy really has.
Yeah.
He's done a lot.
Probably everybody's lives are interesting one way or the other.
Yeah.
That's good. That's what I was trying to. It's really, it's good stuff.
Some people spend a lot of time thinking back, looking back, blaming others, and fortunately I don't do that, and I can't, it doesn't,
Doesn't do much good.
it's part of your,
It doesn't change anything.
it doesn't change
It's
anything.
not healthy.
It's like water under the bridge. So it's, I think that's a real, it's good not to do that. People do the best they can do.
Well, you're gonna make bad decisions.
There's gonna be bad decisions.
Every year you do things you wish you hadn't done, and you just move
Yeah.
on and learn from it.
Yeah, you do. You do.
We might not let you forget them off for a while, Chris.
Chris
That's
is
good.
doing fine.
Oh, I know. I'm just teasing him.
They both are. They both.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, David. It's interesting.
Did the battery run out?
No, I think it's still flashing.
Flashing.
But that's it's real history that you don't get in the books, and I just certainly didn't know a lot of your growing up history.
Yeah, yeah.
He spent a long time in school.
Lots
Yeah.
of
Nothing wrong with that.
What are you looking at, Chris?
Birds. There's like 3 of them fighting over this piece of string or something.
It's called a worm.
No, it's a big old white thing. You see it in the tree?
They're building their nests.
I don't know. One had it, and the other one came up and grabbed it. Then it flew away, and they all took off after it.
Pretty soon we can sit outside, huh?
2 of them left there.
No one has it right now. One's getting it.
Where are they?
This is a nice room.
They're in that big tree right there you climb.
Oh, one got it.
We haven't used this room much until we started having fires.
Hmm.
I
That's
know, it's
pretty
so nice.
We rarely sit in here.
And they don't pop out on the rug, huh?
No.
One popped out on Michael.
Yeah, he got one
What?
tonight.
Oh
Laying
yeah,
watching the movie.
it did not feel good.
We think we're going to replace this carpet this year. Ready for some more wood?
Well, I think we should just move this room.
You know who's got a carpet place is Deborah Maggart.
Carpet place?
Really?
She
It's
does
called
ours.
Best Buy.
She does ours. It's on.
Deborah does?
Best Buy Carpets.
Uh-huh.
It's over
Oh,
on
yeah.
Bryant Drive.
It's her business.
Yeah,
Huh,
check it
that's
out.
better than going to Lowe's or Home Depot.
Yeah, she and
Actually help somebody.
yeah, she'll give you a good
What's
buy.
What's his Paul? Paul
Paul,
Good.
Paul Good is her
They
partner.
own it together.
They do?
Yeah.
Huh.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
What do you see, buddy?
Not much.
Hope this works.
Hmm.
Is that cut? Are you the
No.
director?
I'll just let you do that. Okay, what should I do?
David, I made a pot of decaf.
Did you? Well, we get to have dessert now.
You get to have dessert.
We get to have dessert!
I like that. Gene, where